to the Andy Audate podcast. Today, we're going to be having an exciting episode with Andy Audate, and I am the co host, Lory Audate. We will be talking about going from hustle to harmony as far as your business success. How are you doing today, Andy?
I'm phenomenal. I'm so glad to be here. I've done 3 webinars in the last 24 hours, and I'm like, woo, this is a system, man. We got it down packed, brother. Doing 3 webinars back to back has been pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds actually very productive because most people might have like one webinar a week, one webinar a month. So how has that actually been for you having more webinars than what people might have like in a month or so?
I mean, I think it's really cool. I think it's just got to have it down to a system. So like me being able to like hop off of one webinar, I had another meeting, and then we do a podcast. Is how can you uh, do more in the 24 hours? I think it's an interesting thing because 5 years ago, for me to say, hey, I did a presentation with hundreds of different attendees in different verticals, selling different products on each webinar, I would have said to myself, like 5 years ago, that would take a huge amount of time, a huge workload, a huge boatload of effort. And then today, one of the webinars was scheduled literally maybe a week and a half ago. Like so, and we filled it up with nearly 100 people in that one, and that was like a week and a half ago. Last week I was in the Bahamas, and a couple of days before I went to the Bahamas, the conversation was, "Hey, let's have a webinar." So we did. We scheduled that webinar, and then I sent a video to my team just saying, "Hey, webinar this date, this time. This is what I want to see happen." And then while I was in the Bahamas, my team was able to do all the details and all the minors and like get the PowerPoint ready, get the email sequences, text message sequences, get the funnel set up, the campaign set up, and we were able to launch it, and it was 100% a success. That's what's able to happen, and so we did that 3 times in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, that's definitely productive. So that's cool to see just how much technology can help as well, because you used to do the in-person conferences before where you had to fill it up and have a hotel room and food catering and all that good stuff. But now you
Yes.
just get in your computer and that's why you can do three in a day in 24 hours versus before having to be, locked into a location. So that's really great to see just what's possible doing webinars and things like that on the business side. But for today's podcast, I actually want to go a little bit further back in your journey before webinars, before doing the online business. And this is actually in regards to kind of how you grew up, because I think that a lot of people have asked us at events, social media, like what has it taken for us to reach this level of harmony? Like we work in the business together, we've left California together, things like that. But as far as back in the day, what was it like for you growing up and deciding like you're going to be an entrepreneur? When did that even click for you?
That clicked in, I think I mean, there's the story, right? As a speaker, we have stories that we can pull from. So there's a story that I have where my dad went to New York, and on his way to before he went to New York, he said to me, "Hey, I'm gonna go to New York, and I'm gonna buy sneakers for you." And the specific sneakers I wanted to buy was the Air Force Ones with the swoosh with the Velcro. I think they call them mid Air Force Ones. They're the mid top ones, and I wanted the black ones. And I remember I said, "Dad, I want these. I want to be the coolest sixth grader. I want those specific sneakers." He went to New York. He came back. He didn't have any, and one of the reasons was the money. The cost of those sneakers, I think at the time was like 160 bucks or something like that. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm gonna go get it next time. Like I was expecting it. Like I want you to imagine I'm in a scenario where I'm already preparing the clothes that I'm gonna be wearing with these sneakers. I'm already imagining the nights out that I'm gonna be having with these sneakers, going to the bowling alley with my friends. And I don't get them. I've already envisioned it. It's time for me to get it. Now, what's funny is I didn't get it until like 13 years later, 12 years later, because I had forgotten about it. But I ended up getting them when I made more than enough money. But I ended up saying, remembering that how much I wanted it. However, that's when it started. So I started entrepreneurship because I didn't get the sneakers, and I transitioned into uh, raking leaves and shoveling snow on the East Coast and things of that nature. And that started the journey of, hey, I can make my own money. I don't have to work a job. I can do it myself.
But you mentioned that's your speaker story. So is there a different story? Because it's like this is the story I pull from, but is there a different story?
I think that it stemmed even from before. I think entrepreneurship was not necessarily my blood, but it's what I saw growing up. It's where I'm comfortable in. My mom ran a mom and pop shop called G&B, and what they sold was like clothes. They sold uniforms specifically for the medical field. They call them scrubs. That's the name. That's a terminology. It's a scrub. A scrub is the clothes, the dress that a doctor wears, or so forth. And my mom specifically sold that type of clothes. And I remember just being in fifth grade, going to see my mom work and hustle. She would go to, like, recently, you and I, we had a small business expo where we sponsored their conference. 3,000 people registered for that event, and we were at the most poppin' booth at that spot. You remember, like, people were saying, like, where did the audience go? They're all at the Progretta booth. They're all at the Progretta booth or the Progretta workshop, either one, right? Well, my mom, when I was 10 years old, she was running booths like that. And I'm watching her. I'm 8, 9 years old or 10 years old, watching my mom attract people and do transactions across this table and selling products. And that to me is like, oh, this is how we live. This is I never saw my mom work her 9 to 5. She had a 9 to 5, but I wasn't there with her throughout the day working when she was working her 9 to 5. I was only there when she was doing the hustle. When she was grinding in the business. So I don't know what it's like to really have a 9 to 5, even though my mom has a 9 to 5 and has had a 9 to 5. I just never saw her doing that. I saw her do the grind. So I'm more comfortable in the grind because that's what I know as a child.
Yeah, and I think that that is an important element that you were exposed to entrepreneurship. And I mean, my theory, right? I don't know if I'm right. I don't know the statistics on this. This is just from personal experience and actually seeing how much similarity we have in story growing up. Like my mom worked multiple jobs, and one of them she had a regular 9 to 5, and then it was like cleaning offices and houses on the side. And then that branched off for her to be like a solopreneur for a little bit, just her, my sisters, and I. And we always made more money from cleaning the houses actually than any hourly job because you get
Yeah.
paid a flat fee whether you finish in 45 minutes or 4 hours. You make the same amount. And I hear that a lot as well. Like you were exposed through your mom, your parents, your grandpa, family that just kind of has multiple jobs or businesses to hustle and make money. So
Yeah.
my theory is that like a lot of children from first generation immigrants, they end up acquiring these entrepreneurship skills, which is grit, hustle, resilience, sales, because they're actually really trying to make it out of whatever it is, whether it's the hood, an apartment, or even just sometimes to help parents. Do you think that's applicable in your place? Like seeing that your mom was working and having a business as well, but maybe innately it's also related to how your family's, raising you.
Yeah, I think that's 100% applicable. I mean, if I go back and which leads us to the hustle versus harmony, which I'm excited to go into the harmony piece in that transition.
Yes.
If I go back, I think what you see is what you're attuned to. Like when I think of married couples that argue a lot, and there's like fighting and violence, and there's like people throwing things on the wall and breaking glass and breaking windows. I think that's because they, as a child, saw that and they said, that is love. That's part of the love cycle. Now, other people will come in and say, that's not love, that's trauma, and that's violence, and that's domestic violence. And it's like, yeah, I know, but my heart says it's love because that's what I saw. That's what I know. I think it takes a tremendous amount of attention to the small things and awareness to identify, no, that's trauma, that's violence, and not to repeat the cycle. Most people ultimately repeat the cycle in that scenario. I think the same thing with business. It's like, who who did you see do something better? If you want to make a quantum leap, the way to make a quantum leap is to get around someone who is light years ahead of you and just watch what they're doing. Watch how it is. When I saw my mom, she was hustling. She was hustling. She didn't really have like per se like a big enterprise with a bunch of employees and a bunch of staff and millions of dollars in revenue and all the technology in the world. That's not what essentially she had, but she gave me what I needed to get started in this journey. And it was the most beautiful thing, and I started my journey. Fast forward maybe like 13 years, I got a mentor in the cell phone business, and what I saw was a guy who was making bunch of money, had a bunch of employees, and he had registers and cash registers, and he had, he had a. I saw him have a cheap car, and then he upgraded to a nice car after he made a lot of after he made success. I said, okay, great, that's the journey. So then, what did I do? I had registers. I started my cell phone business. I literally followed his footstep. I started my cell phone business. Had 4 locations. I had the cheap car throughout the whole journey, and then when I made a little bit of money, that's when I got the nice car, right? And then fast forward a few years after that, which is like about 8 years after that, I'm around people who are the people that I connect with now are running $100 million businesses. They're talking about $100 million goals. They have $100 million habits and so on and so forth. And I'm like, oh, that's just what I saw in my most recent years. So like this morning, I'm at the gym and I go into the gym and it's like 5 o'clock and walking into the gym, five and change, walking into the gym. I woke up at four and change, and I'm like, how I've been doing this for years. I mean, I've been doing this for years. There's been some hiccups over the time, especially during COVID when the gyms were closed, that I didn't do it. But I've been doing it for years. But where did I get that from? I had a mentor who invited me to wake up early. I started to do it just to hang out with him, and then it just became a habit. And he's no longer with us. But I'm like, whoa! And another person that he has mentored, who's very popular today, explains that he happens to just wake up early in the morning and start his day early in the morning. If you want to make a quantum leap in your life, just get around people who are just light years ahead of you, and just start seeing what habits they have, what mindset they have, how they think, because it's a different conversation. Like today, it's hard for me to have a conversation with someone who just like wants to talk about like a $10,000 a month goal, because in my even though that's a great starting point, truthfully today it doesn't stretch me as much.
Right.
And it's because the conversation that I have with people today behind closed doors are like, how could you make $100 million? How could you be a what do the billionaires think? How do they think that? What created that? How much impact are they making? I just had a phone call with a team member on our team, and I was explaining to him how a friend of ours in the high level community that we're in, what they did is they created so much recurring revenue that they're like buying cars for people, and the partner has a car, the wife has a car. Everyone's like, you get a car, right? It's the tax write off plus it's only $78,000. But if you make an extra $780,000 and you can buy a $80,000 car, then you're just like, hey, let me buy 10 of them. Let me,
Yeah, it's
just for the
just
fuck of it.
another, yeah, it's another vehicle. It's another thing. It's like us buying a candy bar. So
Yeah, you're
yeah,
like,
what's another bag of
what
chips?
exactly. So if you're making millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of dollars in your main business and you get an extra $800,000 that doesn't really even excite you, you're just like, hey, I'm just gonna buy 10 cars, man. Here you go.
Right. Well, what I'm hearing you say, it sounds like in your journey, so you had the influence of your mom, she had hustle, business, and things like that, right? And then you had other people along the way in your last, 11 years, or even before that, even before you were 18. Um, Knowing that now, where you are now at the level of business success you've had, and knowing what it took to get there, do you think that someone can be successful if they stay in their hometown? If just stay in their hometown to build that quantum leap that you speak of?
I highly doubt it, man. I personally haven't seen it. If you're staying in your hometown just off of human nature, you're gonna you can only create relationships that are in 6 degrees. Just to human nature. Like you meet somebody growing up in high school, growing up in middle school, and then from middle school you meet another person in high school. So like you're on their second degree, and then from there you grow up a little bit. They have a couple of relationships. At most, you're 6 degrees deep from which what you were from middle school or high school. That's not going to happen in a small town. When you move, because I've done both, I've stayed in a small town and I've also moved out of my small town and moved into a big city. When you move, you're forced to create new relationships. You're 100%,
100%. Yep.
you're forced to create new relationships. And because you're forced to create new relationships, it puts you in a position to go and say, hey, you know what? The fact that you're forced to create new relationships, you have to get creative with who you want to be spending time with. So at that point, you will make a decision. Do I spend the person who's making an impact and impacting millions of lives? Do I connect with that person? Or do I connect with the person down the street that has nothing going for him, no progress, and talks negative? Well, here's the thing. If your best friend growing up in middle school happens to be still your best friend and they're talking negative and they're not doing anything, they have nothing for them, it's just habit to call that person on Friday and say, let's hang out. It's just habit to say, hey, I'm hungry. Let's go have dinner together. It's just habit. And you do that for 25 years. And it's like, dude, that's been my boy or my girl for 25 years. That's my best friend. We do everything together. It's just habit. And then you're going to, 25 years go by, 30 years go by, 40 years go by. And then you end up realizing like there was not much progress in your life. If you really want to make a quantum leap, change your environment. Even with you and I in our journey, we were in LA or we were in California. You lived in LA for 30 days and I moved to your town for 30 days and we what the audience, just so you know, what we did is we essentially intersected. Like she moved down to Los Angeles where I lived and for a little bit, and then
And then
I
I got
moved.
stuck there with COVID. And then you said, "Oh, my lease is up. I need a home." And then I was like, "Come to my apartment." And then from our apartment, we got the Vegas. But because it was a new build, we had to wait for it. So we were stuck
Yeah.
in a little, what was it like? Was it a 500 square foot apartment? I don't remember. It
Yeah,
was tiny.
she had a single woman's apartment. Definitely, it was like a single woman's, but I had to change that status real quick, and um, I lived in a apartment. I remember I was doing webinars in your kitchen. Oh my gosh, we should have had more recordings of that time. I was doing webinars in your kitchen, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was a funny journey. And I would speak during the webinar. I would speak on calls, and then I would have to mute myself, and you would turn on the blender and and
Yeah,
I
it
was
was very tiny. It's kind
muted.
of the equivalent of like a loft, like the kitchen and the living room and the dining were like one space. So if you were on the webinar, I had to say, "Hold on, I gotta blend this," and then you would mute it.
Exactly, exactly. And so at that point, I started to realize, like, look, it's about who you spend time with. So when I moved to Las Vegas and I came to Las Vegas, I was like, all right, I'm gonna recreate who my friends are. And most of my friends today happen to be business owners, and we talk about big, massive. We talk about like getting uncomfortable. Do the hard thing. Think big. Think progression. So when people talk about Vegas and they're like, isn't that Sin City? Isn't there a bad bunch of bad things and going on? And isn't there a bunch of homelessness and a bunch of poverty and a bunch of
Not
challenges
where
there?
we are.
I'm like, I that's not my what?
Yeah, not where we are. We're good here.
What are you talking? Like our neighbor man got cyber trucks, got fucking crazy ass cars, and
Hmm.
and I hang around with business owners all day. We talk about money making moves. We talk about
We don't
impacting.
even drink alcohol. So even though it's like a
Oh
24/7 city, like that's not us though. That's not our reality per se.
yeah, I hang around married Christians and stuff like that. So I'm like, you know what? It depends on who you spend time with, and I think that's been the eye opener for me. Is choose your environment. If you want to change your results, choose your environment, and that leads us into harmony. So like when you're in the hustle, you only do what you know, which is survive. Hustle is another word of like survive. Now
Hmm.
in the black culture, it's become something cool, like to hustle, hustle, hustle is something cool because so many people are in the hustle. In the black culture, it became I'm a hustler. I'm a hustler, homie. That's a Cassidy song from 2005 that
So
I grew
hustle
up to.
meant like money, like you're hustling, you're making money.
Hustle is putting extraneous amount of effort.
No, but when you said it became cool, why was it cool? I don't see hustle as cool. Like when I see people hustle, I'm like, why are you hustling? Like I'm trying to have a slow life over here.
I think it's well to each person's hustle is different. So it could be yes, hustle making money. I remember one of my personal trainers years ago. I said he I said to him, like, I'm a hustler. I said to him, I'm a hustler. He's a black man. I'm a black man. I talk to black people just differently, I suppose. So I'm talking to him and I'm like, I'm a hustler. And he's like, you a hustler? And to him, he meant that he was like, yo, what type of drugs you moving? Like he was
Oh
very clear.
no, that
He
went the
was
other
he
way.
was very clear because he grew up in the 80s and the 90s and he went to prison and so on and so forth. And in his head, he was like, oh shit, is that how you driving this car? Is like, what type of drugs you moving? And I was like, oh no, I don't move drugs, bro. I'm just talking about like my work ethic. I just be working hard. And he's like, that's not what hustler means to me. But when I grew up, hustler meant to me is like I work hard, right? And I don't even know what today, if someone who's growing up today in today's, you know, generation, what hustler means to them. But I'm talking about hustling from from a standpoint of putting extraneous amount of effort to reach a certain goal. There's that level of operating a business and operating a financial life, and then there's the harmonious, which is like the integration and connection and peace.
Yeah, I think like you're 100% right. At one point, if you hustle, like you're making big moves. Like another way for it to be like, I make big moves, I make money moves, right? But when I think of going into the next topic of like harmony, it's about making chess moves. How can you increase income, for example? How can you reduce stress? How can you work less and make more money? Now, my mindset came from that from working with investors. A lot of investors have a lot of cash from other businesses. So
Hmm.
when they were looking at properties with me, I would be wondering, well, how is your business running? They don't really work how the average person works. They're not there 9 to 5. Some of the meetings I had with these, investors, it's like, oh, I'm gonna go pick up my kids from school, and so I'll meet you at like 12, and then I'll leave by 1 p.m. And they were so nonchalant, they're just relaxed. They're not like, I gotta go, I gotta do this. No, they're not like that. And for me, I do think that every time that I started to pick up from the people that I worked with, none of them were rushed. None of them were like trying to make a hurried decision to get the next paycheck. They would just be like, I like the property. I don't. I'll talk to you
Mm,
next week. I'll be gone for a week. I'm like, wow,
yeah,
must be another way of living out here.
that's right. I mean, it depends like what works for you. Like, is there certain things that operate for you? I think the thing that gave me harmony was the monthly recurring revenue. Like that put me in a position of like I could just be me. Like I just did a webinar, and even the way I communicated it, it was like, man, sign up if you want. That's pretty much how I and I at the end of the presentation I sat down. I was like, sign up if you want. If you want to, if you want it, sign up. If you don't want it, don't sign up. Okay, this is something that I think is tremendously life changing. You can implement it or you cannot. I do remember doing webinars. I've done hundreds upon hundreds of webinars, and I remember saying like, I need this to work. And you remember those webinars, right? I remember saying like, I need this specific webinar to work.
Well, I remember you staying like an hour or two past the webinar to close the deal. It wasn't like, oh, the webinar's over, I'm going to log off. It's like, no, I have to close this deal in order to hit whatever goal. Yeah.
A revenue goal, and that's especially when my business model at the time was like this one time model. So like years ago, like I would do these webinars, and like that would be my biggest sale. Like that would make or break the month was these webinars. And then today, our webinars are a little different, where we're essentially just adding MRR. And I share that with you as an audience member, whether you are a customer of ours or you are have been a customer of ours, or you're a customer, you're a potential customer in the future. I share that with you because I'm telling you what I know. At the end of the day, I'm telling you what I know. The time that I started to experience an harmonious experience inside of my business was when I changed my business model, going from one-time sales to even to creating monthly recurring revenue. And now I feel an obligation to support other people to experience that level of freedom. You know, I see some husbands that are like I'm married and I know how much my relationship has changed. I know how much my how do I say my perspective on my household has changed when I changed my business model. Like when Lori spends money, it's not the same as it was when I ran a one-time payment business model. When Lori
Mhm.
buys, when I come home and I see Amazon on the front door, and I see more and more Amazon boxes, and all I'm doing is just bringing in Amazon boxes, and I'm just the Amazon delivery guy, last mile person. I don't even trip mentally, historically, from a perspective of where I come from in a hood and in an environment. Thank you, brother. From an environment in a hood, I would trip. I would be like, "Yo, this is ridiculous," because there was a mindset. What do you call it? When there's
Scarcity.
not, yeah, there's a mindset of scarcity. There's not enough.
Mhm.
And
Well,
today, it's like it comes in every day.
right.
MR comes in every day.
Well, we had this conversation. I think for even for me, coming from the humble background that I come from, cleaning houses. Now we have a cleaner staff, and stuff like that. And it was hard for me to switch that. So hustle, coming from my experience, it's saving money, couponing, to pay, like when I was in college, for example. Like I had to
Mm.
coupon to buy shampoo, and I had to coupon to buy like basic things because I didn't have financial aid. So it was like I still have those notes where I would be like paycheck $210, car payment $70, and then I would do an itemized list, and then it's like left for the week $17.50. Like it
Mm-hmm,
was
mm-hmm.
it was rough. But I think that I always say, like, I learned that for a reason, to be smart, because then, once I moved on into career, I was able to save a lot and pay off my car and other things. But I think it is very hard, and I think a lot of people don't um know that there is a mental shift that happens from when you go from hustle mode, like I'm trying to pay the bills, I'm trying to make it out of this debt, whatever it is, college or that work, even if the job doesn't pay enough currently, to successful business or a successful career for some, right? Or successful side hustle. Some people work and have a business. So for me, the harmony and having success in business is really when you can actually make purchases and not feel guilty and not be stressed, like, oh, is my account too low? But I remember I asked you one time, you were in the cold plunge, and I was like, how come you're okay with spending $3,000?
Oh, on the
I
cold
think,
plunge?
yeah, the cold plunge, actually, yeah, moving into the house. And it wasn't because I was mad at you. It's because in my mind, it was like the cold plunge was 3,000. The rest of the furniture that we had to get for the offices, the mattresses, I was like, this is about 10K. Like that's a lot of money, right? Like for example, in college, I didn't even make 10K a year. Now we're dropping
Mm.
10K in a week. Like it was very hard for me to digest. So I remember I was like looking for the Amazon deals, the one with the coupon and the one for on sale. And you're over here like cold plunge, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. I was like,
Yeah,
how can you do that? And you explained to me, I just know that there's going to be more. Like I know because of how the business is set up. And I was like, oh, okay. So the reason I share that is for me, I still in a way struggle with that. It's like, it's okay to spend money. It's okay to do this XYZ. What did it take from how you grew up to now having a business? You had to take a lot of risks to get there, but also feeling that it's okay to spend that as you level up.
that didn't come from my family. I could tell you that much. Because we come from a mindset of scarcity, which is, I mean, I survived in it. It's a survival instinct, right? And what I want to introduce to our community and the people that listen to this content, as well as my family, as well as my friends, is we're breaking patterns. Like I'm hosting these webinars, I'm hosting these events. It's not just for the audience; it's also for me. Like I'm communicating something that I am breaking a pattern, and there is a pattern, like a curse. When people come from poverty, like we have, when you're talking about being young and like you're just getting enough, you're just getting by, and that's the standard, and you're around other people who are just getting by, like just enough to pay the bills. And you know what, like the way you create goals is like that as well, where somebody could say uh their goal is $10,000 a month because when they think about all of the potential expenses, it comes out to like 9 grand. When they can imagine their highest goal in life and the lifestyle that they want to live, and it comes out to $9,000, so then they say that their goal is $10,000. And then when they say that their goal is $10,000, the reality hits. there's unexpected expenses, there's challenges, and you get setback after setback after setback. So then, with those setbacks that could keep coming in, you never hit they never hit their $10,000 goal because they were got discouraged on their journey. They got discouraged on their journey, which is why like I suggest like dream and declare and deliver something much bigger. Dream and declare something much bigger because $10,000 will be it's a small giant, it's a small thing to compare to $100,000 goal. So if you can build a $100,000 a month business, $10,000 is going to be a stepping stone on your way there. Even if $10,000 is the real target for you to hit, by you declaring $100,000 a month, it allows other people to get involved. It allows the support in the infrastructure that you actually need to hit that target. And from a holistic standpoint, your brain is creating systems and processes and results and connections for $100,000 a month goal. And so when you hit the 10 grand, you're emotionally like not even satisfied because you knew you were working towards 100,000. And so like what I noticed with us and even a lot of the people that we happen to be around is a lot of the people that we happen to be around come from challenge environments originally, and they've transitioned, and it's cool if that's my social circle. A lot of my friends that weren't given $1 million to start their business, but there are people in America that, hey, when they were a kid, their dad said, "Here's $1 million, go play with it." Okay. After 18 months, they tricked it off, and then they were given another $1 million to go play with. After 18 months, they tricked it off, and then now they have to go learn the hard lesson. Like, oh, I spent $2 million. Now I got to figure out. Now dad can have one more $1 million. This time, I'm not gonna mess it up. And then the dad's like, okay, here's another $1 million, son, or here's another $1 million, daughter. Go figure this one out. And it's like, okay, and then the dad is like, I'm gonna connect you with some of my rich friends who's gonna teach you on how to invest and duplicate that money. Okay, thanks, dad. Like there's some people who grew up like that. That was not us.
Right.
That was not us. We worked hard for every single dollar that we've gotten.
Yeah, and I actually hope that that is one of the reasons we started the podcast is to have the transparency of our journey. Because I do think that, like you mentioned, it's who are you around and what do you see as possible. For me, I had to leave my hometown as well. The three major cities that I moved to. So the first one being Sacramento, the second one being San Francisco. Then I went to Las Vegas. So Las Vegas ended up being my first out of state move, but every time that I moved, my income grew by like about 20,000 actually on average every time. But also a lot of that was being open to a different possibility. I think that college only teaches so much, and I think that your original friends and original kind of mentors also only teach so much. Like it's on the person to take responsibility and to be like, how can I learn more and more
Mm-hmm.
and more? Um, but with one of the things that you mentioned is having the ability to see more and envision more, than for example $10,000. What would you say to the person that's like, well, I am just making it by, so how do I have time to build a business if I'm literally just surviving? I have to wake up, work 12 hours, 14 hours, I get a paycheck, I pay the rent, and I pay the cars. How do they even create that time to go make more, with what they currently handed, in their circumstance? Because that's a possibility. Unfortunately, nowadays in the United States, people can work 12, 14 hours and they still just getting by.
Yeah, I mean, it's about what you know. I think it's about what you know because there's other people that are creating different results. They still have the same amount of time that you do. It's about what do they know that I don't know? And start asking that question. What information do you know? What processes do you know? And I'm present to that. You know, when I realized like, hey, I haven't built $1 billion company yet. What do I not know? And I just ask myself that question. What do I need to know? And I start asking myself that question, I start getting around different social circles where like I was just talking to somebody about a UNA, an unincorporated association. Like these are so what this is what the wealthy is talking about, right? Having unincorporated associations that essentially are on top of your business and it's a nonprofit. But when you see all these wealthy people have nonprofits, well, they're doing strategic tax advantages that helps them keep the money that they're already making, to then reinvest that money and to keep on growing this. What do you not know? You know, or when in your original industry, when there's people who are like, they don't have the money, they don't have the time. So what they do is that they go ahead and start wholesaling deals, and you start wholesaling these massive deals.
Yep.
I was talking to someone who's wholesaling land, and this is what the deal is. They buy a plot of land, or they get a plot of land, put it on the contract. They rezone the land. So this was a residential land.
Did they switch it to multi?
No, they switch it to commercial, where
Oh
it can
wow.
be for storage units.
Okay.
Not storage units. It can be for commercial for businesses, but then a store.
Business. Okay.
Yeah. So they bought it for $4 million. They got the rezoning, and then they flipped it for $9 million.
Yeah, that's possible. That exists. Yeah.
Right? Because now the house, the plot of land is no longer for residential, which you're limited. This is now a business coming in and saying, "Hey, we need this specific piece of land in this specific area." Man, do you think if you're in a plot of land, if you're around a bunch of homes, and you're like the main area that people are going to be going to for business, for commercial, do you think CVS would be interested in that piece of land?
Yeah,
Of
especially for
course.
those undeveloped, but there's like no nearby stores.
If there's no nearby stores, there's no nearby locations that, let's just say size wise, let's just say 10,000 homes are just in a specific vicinity. I'm just going to get very aggressive and very outrageous. Let's say 10,000 homes, and there's no nearby CVS, there's no nearby gas station. You got to go really far, and there's a specific plot of land that is zoned as a residential, meaning that businesses can't build on top of it. It can only be for homes, for houses. And they worked with the state, they worked with the city, and they got that piece of property rezoned. It's not an easy process. It cost the company that did the work $300,000 with lawyers, but they got that permit and then they rezoned it for commercial. Now any business can come in and put their business. They can put a plaza there, so on and so forth. Is it not? It doubled in price. So what this guy did in that scenario is he doesn't even have to put down the $4 million. He may have needed 300. He needed $300,000 with lawyers. But here's what the journey could look like for somebody. Hey, Mister Current Owner. Well, I want to buy your property. How much you want to sell it for? I want to sell it for $4 million. Okay, I'll buy it for $4 million. However, I just need some time. How much time do you need? I need 180 days to buy this property, and I'll give you $4 million. Thank you, sir. Okay, now you take that property now, and then you go to the lawyer and you say, Mr. Lawyer, I need you to rezone this property. Go through all the paperwork and find the loopholes and the penal codes and whatever else that allows you to rezone. Because you see how I'm talking, I barely even know what the process is. That's why they go to a lawyer. Lawyer, how long will it take you to do this? It will take us 90 days, but it's going to need a team to do all the research. It's going to cost you $300,000 if you want us to put our attention on this. Top tier lawyers. Okay, we'll do it. However, I need to pay you a net 90 terms, meaning you do the work. I'll pay you 90 days after, so a total of 6 months. While they're doing that, you go to find the buyer, and you go, Mr. Buyer, if I were to rezone this, how much would you buy that for? I would buy for $8 million. Okay, got it. So now you're planting the seeds with Mr. Buyer and saying, "Hey, this property will be for available, but look, man, other people are interested. Other people are interested, Mr. Buyer." And then Mr. Buyer says, "You know what? I'll buy it for $9 million." Okay. Mr. Buyer puts the money down. You get paid from Mr. Buyer. You pay off the $4 million that you owe to the seller. You pay off your lawyer, and now you're up. So you put down, you essentially paid $4.3 million of someone else's money. You kept the rest, and now you're up you're up millions of dollars. And most people are working hard at work an entire lifetime just to make $1 million. With a $50,000 income, it'll take you 40 years to make $1 million. If you're making $50,000 a year on a W-2, it'll take you 40 years, and there's other people who are doing it in 180 days. What do you know?
Yeah, I think too, a lot of people don't know, like wholesalers, we learn from YouTube. Like There's no wholesaler academy. Now, are
Yeah.
there coaching programs? There are, but a lot of the information is on YouTube on like how to close a deal, how to find the deals and all of that, and even how to write contracts. But that's just one example, right? This is a very niche down specific, multi-million dollar deal. But I
Yeah.
do think that the opportunities are out there for anybody that is, whether they're still in their hometown, 100% the access to the rest of the world is there. If you have a phone, if you have internet, you have access to all that, you already have access to making money. And I think that's where people sometimes forget that you have to start somewhere. Like if you're not equipped to move right here right now, leave your hometown, but what can you do on a weekly basis to level up your skills? You're always going to get far with sales skills. You're always going to get far if you're up with trends. And I think people just don't even know how far technology has gotten if they haven't studied. For example, we're millennials. If there's millennials out there and they're not studying on the current trends with ChatGPT, AI, what Progreta can do, if they're not keeping up with it, they're not even aware really what their competition is. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. 100%. Like there's small businesses today that are going to say, I'm not going to put any attention on AI or artificial intelligence inside of my business. I'm not putting any attention to that because I've been operating my business for 30 years without it or 20 years without it. You're going to get taken up. You're going to get swallowed. You will get swallowed. Even if you're working a job today, if you're even working a job, you got to find out how you can incorporate artificial intelligence inside of your business. Even if you're working a job, we live in a new world today, and that world is going to forever change. Similar to when people said, "Hey, you know what? I'm always going to be in the cassette tape business. Cassette tapes sell. I will always be in the cassette tape business. You're not going to see me in another industry." Over time, CDs start coming in. Don't bother with the CDs. Listen to cassette tapes. And then guess what happens? MP3 comes over, cassette tapes obsolete. It becomes an antique. You're not creating any revenue. This reminds me of that movie that you and I watched in our old house. We moved 3 times. Like I've been married for
We're
2 years.
always moving. I just told someone that I was like, I think we just moved 2 times in the last 2 years.
Yeah, we're progressing so fast. Like we went from an apartment, we got a townhome, and then going to our own home. But I remember we watched a movie in our old house, and this movie was about how Spotify was created. And the gentleman was like, the gentleman who was in the music industry was like, there's always going to be CDs because they were making so much money on CDs. Cost pennies to make. They sell it for $20, and that was one of the huge income streams for these music labels. And there was a gentleman who was just absolutely against Spotify. Rather than partnering with Spotify, he was just absolutely against it. And ultimately, his career ended up going down in the toilet with the CDs, right? The compact disc. So technology is constantly moving forward. How do you listen to music today? Are you going to YouTube and searching your song, or are you going through a cassette tape deck and looking for the track and scrolling through and playing the cassette tape to find the specific section of the song? Is that how do you want to make your decision on playing music? Well, that's the same thing that your customer is doing. If you're not using artificial intelligence, over time they're gonna say, "Man, I'm just gonna go through Spotify or YouTube, and it's easier." And if you haven't advanced your business with the new technology, the future of what it looks like is you're gonna always be available 24/7. That's how it's gonna. All businesses must be available 24/7. That's gonna be the future
Yeah.
of small businesses.
I just told you my little hack the other day. It actually reminds me how the whole being available 24/7. And then I think it was last week, and I was like, "Hey, do you want to know my little secret of why people think I'm so productive?" And you're like, "Sure." And I was like, "I schedule so many messages on Friday, and they go out Monday 9 a.m. and I'm not on my computer." And I was like nerding out, but it's because like I think what's changed for me, going back into like what does harmony and success in business mean to us? It's I don't have to work 9 to 5. Today I had some things to do in the morning. I just said to the team, "Hey, I'll see you guys at the 12 meeting." I'm in an Uber having the meeting, and life goes on, right? I do still remember those days where it's like I only got paid when I clocked in at 9 and I stayed until 5 something. But
Yeah.
as an overachiever, I never needed 8 hours to get my work done, like ever. So I was always going nuts at my desk. But it's one of those little things. Like when I told you, I was like, "Do you know how people think I'm so productive? They're scheduled," and you're like, "Yeah, I do that too."
Yeah.
But would you say that that's kind of been one of the things, going into the last questions? The reason we've been able to find harmony both in business and our personal life and being married and having that balance, it is because a lot of it is technology.
Yeah.
We are thinking of things, we are producing the outcome, but it's no longer, I would say, just me and you. There's a team that takes care of certain things, and then there's a lot of automations and AI that we use so that we're not the ones doing every single manual step.
That's how I create harmony, man. I use the latest and greatest technology, and it helps becoming easier and easier. I told the team, I said, you got to, I said, listen to the future. You got to understand this, team, that you better use it or it will replace you. You better be the one in control, meaning that you're utilizing the technology. Why? I see it going. I'm telling people in advance. I'm telling people it's not if you should use AI. It's you must use artificial intelligence and produce triple, quadruple your current workload in the same size. That's how our company can grow 400% and us not do anything. Us not add any other additional team members.
And
That's
work
the
less
world.
hours. Like you
And
were
work.
just in a week at a cruise.
Yeah, last week I was in the Bahamas, and I tell my team that like, hey, how can you work less? How can you, but I mean, not do less work. How can you
Produce
work
more
less?
but work less
Yes.
hours. Yeah.
How can you produce more but work less hours? And I'm like, utilize technology to do a lot of the work for you. I, some of the things that we're doing. Like, I recorded a 30-minute audio, and I did a brain dump in that 30-minute audio, and it was about the podcast. And years ago, this is how much things have changed. I thought we were on the greatest, latest technology back then, but years ago, I would hop on a Zoom call and I would talk to a team member and we would record that Zoom call and I would do what we call a brain dump. And a brain dump is when I'm like, Andy got a lot of ideas. We gotta get it out of his head and put it on paper. So I would hop on a call and I would just explain and explain and explain and explain and explain something of like an idea of how we're gonna grow our business. It could be about a specific product or a strategy to market, whatever. And then a team member would take maybe 4 days to listen to it, play it back, play it back, play it back, and then they would create a Google Doc. And on that Google Doc, they would essentially break it down into steps of what I said in that brain dump. What I did last night, I recorded an audio, and in that audio, I did a whole brain dump. It was a huge brain dump, 30 minutes of me just talking and talking and talking and talking and talking about, uh, you know, what I want to do with a marketing campaign. And then I took that transcript and I just I went to Loom and I copied transcript, uploaded the whole thing. I didn't even prompt because the
You
brain
just
dump
copied it.
copy and pasted the prompt
Yeah.
because in the audio I was like talking to a team member, even though it's like I recorded me talking to a team member. So I essentially in the audio, it's just a voice note that happened to be 30 minutes. I'm telling my team member what to do, and then I took the instructions and I uploaded to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT gave me back exactly what I wanted it, what the output. It broke down the pricing, it broke down the offer, it broke down the strategy, it
Wow.
broke down everything. And it took less than 1 minute for me to accomplish that. Something that would have took 4 days, maybe 5 days of someone's full-time effort to really break down and understand what I said, put it into a Google Doc. It would have took 3 or 4 days. We got it done in a minute. So it took me let's say 30 minutes for me to record the thing, and then took me 1 minute to upload to ChatGPT and get the output. Now my team has a great like a great deployment plan on exactly what we're gonna do for this marketing campaign. So
Yeah.
that's the technology that's the world that we live in.
Yeah, I mean, those are just two small examples, but I definitely hope that this podcast, sharing that it doesn't always mean, like Andy said, you don't have to come from a lot. Let's say you don't need to have, the $1 million inheritance or anybody backing up your vision. You are 100% capable as long as you commit to having that growth mindset. And we hope that this also gives you an idea comparing and asking, like, am I in hustle mode or am I in thriving mode and harmony with work life balance? And that this has some action steps for you all. Is there anything else that you want to add, Andy?
I mean, if anything was inspiring to you, let us know. The comments let us know whether we should continue to do this or not. So if you found this to be valuable and inspiring to you and it was valuable, please let us know because that will give us feedback on whether we're going in the right direction or not in this type of content that we're creating.
Yes. Well, we'll see you all on the next podcast, and we hope that you join us live. But if not, you can always comment and we will connect on there as well. Have a great rest of your day.